everybody, this is the Wikstrand. So the movie of today is yet another of the old Universal monster movies that was made in the 1930s. This is not one of my favorites. I much more prefer Frankenstein or The Bride of Frankenstein or The Invisible Man. And much of this probably has to do with the fact that there are two actors that has played Dracula that are far better than Bela Lugosi. Christopher Lee and Gary Oldman. You will probably not agree with that one, but you know, that's how I look at it. Bela Lugosi is great. His, you know, iconic accent and his magnetic presence is one thing, but I just can't look at him and not thinking, man, I really miss Christopher Lee and Gary Oldman in the role of the, you know, legendary vampire. Now, Dracula is an iconic movie with fantastic sets, great atmosphere and all that good stuff, but there are some monumental things in this movie that could have been done so much better. Let's find out what those were, shall we? This is Dracula. This is not the first story about Dracula. This is essentially the story about, you know, how Jonathan Harker comes to Dracula's castle, how Dracula then goes over to England and wants to turn Mina Harker into a vampire, and Van Helsing comes in to try to stop him. For being made almost 100 years ago, this movie has a pretty okay pace, and it tells a story in a pretty compact and efficient way. The thing is that most of the action actually happens off screen. I don't know if they had to do that because of, you know, censorship or if it was because of an artistic choice. Nevertheless, it is a problem this movie has. The acting is pretty okay. I like the guy who played Renfield, who goes so much overboard with his overacting. It is kind of hilarious and almost makes this movie into an all-out parody of itself from time to time. If you've never seen, you know, the original Dracula from 31, I would suggest that you see it. It is not as good as Dracula with Christopher Lee or Dracula with Gary Oldman from 92, one of the most underrated movies of all time. I fucking love that movie so much. As I said, Bela Lugosi, very good Dracula, but there are two ones that are better. The rest of the actors, well, they are pretty okay, and the characters are all fine, and they're archetypical, and we kind of know what they're going for, and we kind of know what they're doing. And this is a movie that is all fine. It's an absolute classic, but it is not as good as the other Universal horror movies, and I wouldn't say that it is a movie that, you know, really deserves its mythological status. I understand why they have it. This is not a horror movie that is built on jump scares and or gore. It's built mostly on atmosphere, and I like that. It is a classic. It is just not as good as I think it should be. It's a really tricky movie to rate. Considering that it's 90 years old, it hasn't aged that much, but it has still aged in some sectors, especially when it comes to, you know, Renfield and how over the top he is. But he was very funny and very entertaining. In the end, I have to give this movie 57 points. It is a classic, and I do understand why it has its status that it has. It is just not as good as I would have hoped it was. I think it's better than Nosferatu, and Bela Lugosi is magnetic in this movie, but apart from him, there isn't really anybody else to hang our hat on, except for Renfield. So if you have never seen Dracula, go and see Dracula, but there are better Dracula movies out there. So I'll see you next time for, well, so-and-so reviewing, well, such and such. Thank you for watching. Thank you very much.